Hello everyone, this is Aimsell back at it again with another Arcane Odyssey video, and for today's video I'm going to be talking about Warlord and the best fighting styles for Warlord, what kind of armor you should use for Warlord, you know, a lot of Warlordy things we're going to be talking about today. And considering the current meta, I think it's time to finally talk about Warlord, and that's a lot of Warlords I've just said right there, but it's true. Right now in the game in 1.16, Warlord is basically considered one of the best, if not the best classes in the game. I've talked to many different people on Discord earlier, and everyone just seems to agree that Warlord is fucking insanely, stupendously insane cracked at the moment. Like you know, it's a big change compared to 1.15 where Warlord was kind of mid. It was still decent, but it was kind of mid. But now it's back to the very top, just like in 1.13. If any of you guys remember Warlord back then, it was not fun to play against. But before we get into a video, a like and sub would be greatly appreciated, as I'm trying to reach 10k subs by sometime this year. So yeah, let's just get started. First thing I'm going to talk about is the fighting styles. So at the moment, everyone just seems to agree that Sailor Fist is collectively the best fighting style to use for a Warlord. You have insane size, insane damage, and your speed's not that bad. And so if you want to run the best you can possibly do, then just, you know, run Sailor Fist Warlord. And second, honestly, every single Warlord fighting style at the moment is viable. You know, you could run Iron Leg, you can run Boxing, it's all good. I will say that Thermal Fist at the moment for Warlord in particular is kind of mid, at least compared to the alternatives. Now for Berserker, Thermal Fist is still, it's amazing, but for Warlord, you're better off just doing something like Iron Leg or Sailor Fist, or, you know, something like that. So yeah, that's the fighting styles. Let's move on to the armor, and I'm missing my chest piece and leggings because of the insanity effects. So this is actually the build, my build that I was making for Warlord in 1.15, but I never quite had the time to make a video about it. But I did talk to some people on Discord about what they thought about this, and they all agreed that this is a very suitable build for Warlord, you know, even in 1.16, because I made this build in 1.15 and it still holds up very well even with all the changes. So this build gives me 78 power, 1076 defense, 117 attack size, 170 attack speed, and 2 insanity. Especially with, I don't know what happened to Warlord this update, but VTech's cooked somehow. The fucking attack size is just enormous. So having some attack size, it will definitely come in very handy, and obviously you don't want to have too low of attack speed either, because, you know, you want to be able to hit your attacks. So what am I using for this? Well, as you can see here, I'm using the Brisk Grey Ravenna Apostle bracelets, sorry, the Atlantean Armored Sunken Iron Armor. Holy shit, this is extremely loud, let me just turn my volume down. I'm using the Brisk Pink Ravenna Apostle Folds, and here we have the Atlantean Armored Sunken Iron Boots, and the Brisk Sunken Iron Helmet. So yes, this is the first build that I've posted in quite a while where you do not need any Sunken Warrior. This works perfectly well, and obviously you can make a build with Sunken Warrior and make it work, but, you know, I figure that a lot of people would probably have more Sunken Iron compared to Sunken Warrior, but, you know, maybe not. So the enchantments, we have just Candelera, we have a gate on the both sunken pieces, and everything else is just Candelera, perfect energy Candelera. So that's the armor in a nutshell, not too much to say about that. But the very juicy part, especially with the introduction of skill notes, I'm going to now talk about the weapons. And for this, I decided to go with a Poison Tooth Dagger, a Sunken Sword, and an Iron Staff. Now, to be completely honest, you could like run anything you want at this point, because with skill notes you can basically put any good skill onto any weapon of your choice. Weapons at the moment, well, at least the type of weapon that you equip doesn't really matter as much compared to pre-update. But for the purposes of this video, I decided to settle with these because I'm actually pretty comfortable with this setup. So for the Poison Tooth Dagger, I have Flying Slash, Flying Phoenix, Dagger Throw, and Spiraling Fury on it. Now you might be wondering, why do I have Flying Slash on a Poison Tooth Dagger as opposed to something like a Kai Saber? Well, that's actually quite simple. It's because any skill that you have on Poison Tooth Dagger will proc poison, because it's a poison tooth dagger, so you know, it gives your opponent poison. So you use a flying slash, flying phoenix, dagger throw, it just gives your opponent poison, as opposed to like Kai Saber where it doesn't have any status effect that it afflicts. So yeah, that's why I prefer on this, and also it's just faster. I like fast things. I don't really like being slow. A lot of people find ways to play with huge attack size and like no attack speed. I don't like that, in my opinion. I just prefer having some speed at least. So I decided to go with poison tooth dagger instead of putting this all onto like Kai Saber. But obviously it's up to you. I'm not saying that these weapons are the best you can possibly use. As I said, it doesn't really matter anymore what kind of weapons you use, it's just the skills that you use on it. And here we have the dense sunken sword, and on this I have whirlwind, shining cycle, rising tide, and flash strike. You know, just every single good fucking skill you can possibly put, and you just put it on one weapon. Now I did do some experimentation, and you can put all of these onto a halberd, which is a warlord only weapon, and a lot of people actually prefer doing that, but I've tested that myself and I just didn't like the startup that came with the halberd, and this, you know, the speed difference is just pretty large. I mean, you can do that if you want. If you want to go all into attack size and use halberd and have fucking humongous attack size and gigantic explosions, then use the halberd. Personally, I just like not being slow as fuck and having a startup that takes like 10 seconds and your opponent just starts end like demoning you. You know, I just don't really like that too much. And here we have the Swift Iron Staff. Obviously, on this, you can't really put much else other than P-Gale, Sparrow Thrust, and Knock and Blitz on it, but all three of those are very, very good skills to put on a polearm. So at this point, you may be wondering what kind of stats, like allocation for strength and weapons that I'm using, because as you can see here, I can use Sparrow Thrust, which is weapon level 160. And judging from that, you should already be able to tell that I'm using 120 strength and 160 weapon. You know, I just simply don't see the point in doing anything else other than these stats, because you can use fucking Sparrow Thrust, like what else do you want at this point? And this also applies to like Conjure as well, because you can use 160 weapons on Conjure, use Sparrow Thrust. You can use 160 weapons on fucking Knight and use Sparrow Thrust. You could use 160 weapons on anything and be able to use Sparrow Thrust. So yeah, Sparrow Thrust galore, it is what we like to do, and that's how it is. So now I'm just going to quickly run down on my fighting style techniques. So for Crash, I have the explosion size set to 20%, because to be honest, there's hardly a difference in size compared to 20 and 100%, but there is a gigantic damage difference, and that's why, you know, it's just best to go with 20% in my opinion. And for Smash, you can use 1 or 2 amounts. I wouldn't recommend going anything above 2 because it's just not very consistent. But considering this is Sailor Fist, and it's not the fastest of fighting styles, so I decided to settle with one single Shockwave smash. If you're using boxing or something like Thermal Fist, you could use 2 because it's faster, but because of the speeds, I decided that it's probably safest to just go with single. Here we have Rush. I just set it to 1 hit, so you know, you have the smallest chance possible of it breaking halfway through. And I just have the finisher at Spinning Sledgehammer because it looks cool. It doesn't matter too much. And for shot here, 100%. You can use 50, you can use 20, it's up to you, but there isn't too much of a damage difference. So yeah, it doesn't really matter too much. So now I'm going to showcase the different skills that I have on the weapons. So with the dagger, I got Flying Slash, Flying Phoenix, Dagger Throw, and obviously you got Spiraling Fury, which is pretty useful, but obviously I'm not near someone, so I can't use it at the moment. And for Sunken Sword, you know, just a simple Whirlwind, Shining Cycle, Rising Tide, Flash Strike type shit. And for the staff, you obviously got P-Gale, you got Sparrow Thrust, and you got Knock and Blitz. A pretty solid loadout, and that is what I use for the weapons. So that is basically the Warlord build that I'm currently using at the moment for experimentation. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more content like this. And yeah, I'll see you all later.